everyone, round 2 of the Premier League guide, and in this video we could expose every single Premier League team before the season even started, because we're going to tell you what the weakness of every Premier League team will be this season. But it's not all negativity. We've already put forward the first episode of the Premier League guide, which is the strength of every Premier League team. So when you've wallowed in the darkness of this video and its negativity, enjoy the sunshine and, like a sunflower, rise up as we look at the strengths of every Premier League team. Let's crack on with the darkness first and foremost. Arsenal, strikers not being clinical enough. Now, generally, Arsenal's forwards perform at an exceptional level when it comes to goal scoring, but one outlier in terms of their XG seems to be the finishing, specifically of their strikers. Now, Nketiah and Jesus are great players, and we are splitting hairs here because Arsenal are such a great team, but the XG underperformance is a minor concern in my opinion, especially when it comes to sort of the marginal gains in those big matches when you need to take those chances. I feel like if Arsenal strikers were matching their goals to XG, they could be title challengers easily. Maybe Balogun is the answer though. Aston Villa, depth up front. Aston Villa have a squad full of multifunctional players, as we discussed in part 1, but I'm not too sure on their options up front past Ollie Watkins. Of course, Danny Ings is gone, and I like Cameron Archer, and I appreciate he got a lot of goals in the Championship, 11 goals in 17 starts last season, in fact. But if Ollie Watkins picks up an injury, I think it will seriously impact Villa's ambitions of top 6 this season. I definitely think it's something that's going to have Villa fans sort of tossing and turning this season. But one positive is that Watkins generally has a good injury record, but with the amount of matches Villa could have this season, it is a slight concern. Bournemouth, it's got to be set pieces. Last season, Bournemouth conceded 21 goals from set pieces, and that has to be a big worry again this season, in my opinion, with the gentle strengthening, but not really in defensive positions. It's always dangerous to use another manager's stats against a new one, but here's why I think it's relevant. Iraola has used this pre-season to implement his pressing style and those attacking philosophies. This means that things like set pieces may have been a bit lower down on the agenda and could become an issue again this season. If they can iron these goals out, they could become incredibly hard to play against. But I still think it's going to be a weakness this year. Brentford replacing Ivan Toney's goals. We talked about it in part 1 about how the playstyle may change this season with Toney not eligible for selection, and how that could see Brentford become a counter-attacking machine this season. But that does come with its downsides, unfortunately. Toney scored 20 goals last season and got 4 assists, which meant they had a direct hand in 41% of Brentford's goals last year. Who can replace Ivan Toney? No one. And look, I think they'll be able to find a playstyle without him, but I fear that replacing 20 goals may be a big task. Brighton, can they be clinical when it matters? So Brighton are going to be one of the best this season in terms of chance creation, but their XG performance from these chances are a bit underwhelming based on last season's data. Only one of Brighton's forwards from last season overperformed their XG last season, and it was Evan Ferguson, who only overperformed it by 0.7. I mean, one of these seasons Brighton will overperform their XG and they will be scoring 100 goals, but until then it's a weakness. Burnley, this is a funny one to say, but you'll understand what I'm trying to say here. What happens if it goes wrong? My question on Burnley and Vincent Kompany is that, what happens if it does go wrong for a few matches? Last season, Burnley had problems when it came to goal scoring for the first month or so of the campaign, but they sort of ironed it out, and ultimately they had the quality to outshine most of the league. But it's different in the Premier League. If they go 5 matches without winning, I wonder how Burnley cope with that. With Kompany being a very detail-orientated manager, and that came across in that Gary Neville interview, I wonder if he can cope with losing matches after being so successful in his first season, but also for the majority of his career. He's been with very dominant teams. I'm intrigued to see what effects that'll have. Chelsea, midfield depth, which is amazing when you think of how much money they've spent, but the squad doesn't have the same depth that you would imagine. I've really enjoyed the pairing of Gallagher and Enzo in midfield over pre-season, as well as the Enzo and Santos pairing, but with Chelsea having sold or let go of players like Jorginho, Kante and Kovacic, I'm a bit surprised they haven't gotten in that big name to replace the big names that have left. Now, at the time of recording, Caicedo hasn't signed. He has been touted, but Brighton are playing hardball. If they fail to get someone, it could come back to bite them if Enzo gets injured, because at the minute, he is irreplaceable with the players that they have in their squad. Crystal Palace, what is the plan B here? That's the weakness, I think, when it comes to Crystal Palace. So it looks like Elise could well leave this window. Again, he hasn't done so yet at the time of recording, or may have already left by the time this video comes out. But this puts a lot of attacking ingenuity, pressure, if that makes sense, on Eze. I don't think Palace are prepared to lose Elise, and they took their time in replacing Zaha. So losing Elise massively decreases the quality of their squad. I also think the squad will lack a plan B this season. If Eze doesn't have a good match, then I think you're going to be looking around and it's going to feel hard to see anyone other than Eze and França in terms of creating chances.
I'm gonna get one of those vultures one day.
Again, that's if Elise leaves, but still with Elise, that's 3 players really in the squad only that you can see creating chances this season. Everton, the home form could be a weakness. I think there's a misconception about Everton when it comes to Goodison Park and it being a fortress. At times it can be a horrible atmosphere for opponents to play in, but if they quiet down the crowd early on, the likelihood is that it'll become toxic towards the Everton team. And the home form league table here shows how this was the case last season and how the home form could have seen them relegated. But if they can be good at home this season, they'll definitely stay up easily. Could Fulham's weakness be that they were running really hot last season? Fulham last season were averaging a goal for every 0.34 shots on target. This may be a sign of quality in the squad in terms of taking their chances, definitely could be, and the momentum of going up from the Championship where they scored loads of goals as well, but it could also be a sign that they were running hot last season. So for example, if you have a look at the teams above them in the table for this metric, Fulham were also above the likes of Aston Villa, Newcastle, Man United and Brentford for this metric. So if you have a look at their non-penalty goals, minus XG, and look at the rest of the league for this metric, it feels like Fulham were running very hot last season, and if that does catch up with them, which often it can do, there could be trouble ahead. Liverpool, they are going to be too fun, maybe? Now, when I say they're going to be too fun, I mean they're going to be too fun for neutrals who watch them. We talked in part 1 about how their new setup allows them to score a lot of goals, but what we didn't tell you is that it does take away from their defence at times, and despite scoring 15 goals in pre-season, they've also conceded 9 goals. But the shocking stat is that they have lost leads in 2 out of their 4 pre-season matches. Now, there are lots of changes that are made, and so I think there's a pinch of salt when it comes to that one, but it does highlight a chink in their armour. Luton Town, quality. Now, I hate to be the guy that says Luton lack quality because I feel like it's been said a lot. But when I look at their squad, I just can't see like who becomes that standout player that takes to the demands of the Premier League. Last season, Mitrovic, Palhinha did it for Fulham, Morgan Gibbs-White and Johnson did it for Forest, and Philip Billing and Dom Solanke, I think, did it for Bournemouth. But for Luton, I just struggle to see who these players for Luton can be. Also, the only player to get double figures last season for Luton was Carlton Morris with 20 goals. Now, he may be the guy, but the next highest goal scorer was Elijah Adebayo with 7, which makes you worry about an over-reliance on a player that's not Premier League proven as of yet. Manchester City, I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Squad depth? Again, look, it's so hard to find a weakness in a side that's literally just won a treble, but there have been some outgoings this summer that are either yet to be replaced or haven't been perfectly replaced, in my opinion. The departures of Mahrez and Gundogan are big ones. You can't get away from that. And Mahrez was so important in the Champions League last season, whilst Gundogan was the epitome of a big game player at the back end of last season. I know Kovacic has come in and is quality. He's also different. And I still feel that the squad is worse off without Gundogan. The lack of a Mahrez replacement is also a bit baffling considering Man City are always aggressive in their business and they get it done early. Both players release pressure in games by scoring great goals with their finishing ability. So to replace that is going to be very, very difficult. Manchester United. I think a weakness here for them in terms of what they want to do is overall quality. I think Man United have about 6, maybe 7 elite players such as Rashford, Fernandes, Casemiro, Højlund is going to be even more so. But past these guaranteed starters, I'm not sure on how good the backups are. And, you know, that has obviously been the problem over the last few years. For instance, Højlund gets injured, then what? You know, is McTominay good enough to have an extended stint in the team if Mount is injured and you're trying to win the title? Who is the backup to Varane in a similar situation? Can you rely on Dalot or Wan-Bissaka to be elite? The reasons I make these points is teams like Man City and Arsenal have 2 elite players in pretty much every position and have quality everywhere. Whilst Man United, they're making progress, but I'm still not sure if they're quite there yet. Newcastle United passing sequences. Now have a look at this graphic here. It tells us something really big about Newcastle. They might only have 1 gear. The graphic shows us that Newcastle averaged about 3.2 passes per sequence last season, and they had a direct speed of around 1.5 meters per second. This means that the style of play, it was a lot faster in terms of attack than the likes of Brighton, Arsenal and Man City. This may be a problem in terms of being able to control matches and have a stranglehold on opponents, especially teams that maybe play with a low block. And the knock-on effect of this is that the Newcastle team ultimately might have to work harder in matches, and it could knacker them out with European football on the horizon as well, which I think both emotionally and physically is going to be a lot for them this year. Nottingham Forest, away form. Because if their strength was their home form last season, their weakness is most definitely their away form. There's also another weakness that I want to point out. But first, Forest had the worst away form of any Premier League team last season, and were only one of 2 teams not to get double points on the road. The second weakness I have for them is that their key pass numbers are really, really poor, were really poor. A key pass is a pass that results in a shot. Forest ranked dead last for this metric last year, and it's a bit of a worry for me in terms of how many chances they can create and whether or not the style of play actually suits them or has just been born out of circumstances. Sheffield United, the attack. I think Iliman Ndiaye's U-turn may be a big problem that lasts the whole season for Sheffield United fans, and I'm sure you are sick of hearing about this, and I'm very sorry. But it is the weakness. He got 24 goal contributions for Sheffield United last season and was their top goal scorer. He had the most assists. He's important, you know. He was also ranked top in carries into the area and progressive passes received. So not only are they losing genuine goal threat, but they're also losing an important contributor to their style of play. They also probably didn't think they'd lose him with the move allegedly falling through, but then reviving itself out of absolutely nowhere, which is tough to sort of get back and replace when you go, oh, okay, we've got him. No, we haven't. Have we? No, we haven't. That's tough. It's a gut punch. Nobody in the squad can replace him in terms of quality, and it's a huge ask to replace him in the transfer market at this stage. Hopefully they can, but I'm struggling to see it. Tottenham could be too gung-ho. The nature of Tottenham this season will be quite similar to Liverpool in a sense. I think they'll look like one of the best teams in the league sometimes from an attacking point of view, but simultaneously they will look schoolboy at the back, especially if they don't get themselves a bloody centre-back, which I know Tottenham fans are screaming for. Conceding set pieces may be a big problem for them this season as well, based on what we've seen in pre-season. We did a video on it if you want to go and check that out. Jekyll and Hyde nature of them. This could mean that Spurs have to score 2, 3, 4 to win matches this season. Box office, but also not good on the hearts of Spurs fans. And I've seen a few Spurs fans. Their cholesterol is on occasion through the roof. What? What? What the are you talking about? That is crap. Put that in. I need to be told off. West Ham scoring the first goal. So this is a really interesting table that highlights West Ham's possible weakness this season, certainly was last season. This is a graphic that shows how often teams scored or conceded the first goal within a match last season. It shows that West Ham conceded the first goal in 24 matches last season compared to the first on 14 occasions. This is a telling stat as to why the league campaign didn't really get off to a great start. It was actually a bad start, wasn't it? And this has to be addressed this season. All teams will score first and sit back against West Ham, and that is something that they struggle against because they look so much better when they have that space in behind to attack, aka the Jarrod Bowen goal in the Conference League final. Wolves, go on, guess. Have a guess. Can only be one thing when it comes to Wolves. It's a problem that has followed them around for a few seasons now, and that is, of course, goal scoring. They were the league's lowest goal scorers last season with only 31 goals, and the season before that they were the 4th worst in this department, so it's clearly a long-term issue for them that they just can't seem to address for one reason or another. And actually they have a lot of forwards now because they've been trying to address this situation. With the financial constraints on the club, they look like their hands are going to be tied when it comes to bringing in new faces or any more, and that is a massive worry for them and could, say it quietly, send them down. Sorry.